On the day of my wedding, I caught my fiancé sleeping with my maid of honor, so I calmly walked down the aisle and exposed them in front of everyone before disappearing for 5 years. Now I'm back, and no one is ready for what I've become. They say your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. Mine? It was the day I buried the last remnants of who I used to be. I caught my fiancé, Nathan, in bed with my maid of honor, Jenna, 3 hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I simply closed the door, walked out of the room, and took a breath so deep it nearly cracked my ribs. The betrayal didn't even feel real. Nathan had been my high school sweetheart. We'd been together for almost 10 years. Jenna had been my best friend since we were 12. They didn't just break my heart. They shattered it, spat on the pieces, and set them on fire. The church was already full. Hundreds of people, friends, family, co-workers, all there to witness what was supposed to be the most beautiful moment of my life. Instead, I turned it into their worst nightmare. I walked down that aisle, dressed in white, veil over my face, hands steady. Nathan stood at the altar like nothing had happened, the same fake smile he always used when he was hiding something. Jenna was at my side, fixing my train, acting like she hadn't just stabbed me in the back an hour earlier. When I reached the front, the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union. I raised my hand. Actually, I have something to say. And then I told the truth. Every detail. How I found them. What I heard. What they said about me. I read the text Nathan had sent Jenna, screenshotted and printed. The guests gasped. Some cried. Others stared in stunned silence. My mother nearly fainted. Nathan turned pale. Jenna started shaking. When I was done, I took off my veil, handed it to Jenna, and said, "Since you already had him this morning, you might as well finish the job." And then I walked out of the church, got into the cab I had waiting, and disappeared. For 5 years, I was a ghost. But ghosts don't stay dead forever. Now, I'm back. And I'm not the girl they remember. I'm something much, much worse. 5 years. That's how long I gave myself to disappear. I changed my name, cut my hair, moved to a different coast, and built a life from the ashes of the one they destroyed. No one knew where I was. Not even my parents. I left a letter for them the day I vanished. Nothing angry, just final. In those 5 years, I stopped being the girl who cried behind closed doors and learned how to weaponize silence. I built a career in corporate restructuring, helping failing businesses rise from the brink. I became known for being ruthless, efficient, untouchable, a woman who didn't flinch when men twice her age tried to talk over her, a woman who always left a trail of stunned boardrooms behind her. But I never forgot. Every birthday, every anniversary, every little milestone I should have shared with Nathan, every sleepover I should have laughed through with Jenna, I remembered. And every time I did, I trained harder, worked later, became sharper. They thought they broke me, but I was just sharpening my knives. So when the email hit my inbox, request for strategic consultancy, Goldwick Events, I nearly laughed out loud. Goldwick Events, the luxury wedding company run by Nathan's mother. Of course, I accepted the offer immediately. They were planning to expand. New investors, a rebrand, public funding. They wanted someone with my credentials to prepare them for IPO. They didn't know the name on the proposal belonged to the girl Nathan left at the altar. They only knew me by the name I use now, Eva Cross. And Eva Cross didn't come to forgive. She came to burn what was left. The first time I saw Nathan again was in the glass lobby of the Goldwick headquarters. He walked past me without a second glance, until he heard my voice. "Mr. Reed?" I called, extending a perfectly manicured hand. He turned, and for a moment his expression stayed neutral. Then his eyes widened. Just a flicker. But it was enough. I smiled. The kind of smile you offer a man before you slit his throat in a boardroom. "I'm Eva Cross. I'll be handling the restructure for your IPO." He blinked twice, unsure if he was seeing a ghost or a nightmare. You look," he stammered. "Different?" I offered. "Yes, I imagine I do." Before he could recover, I turned and walked toward the conference room. Let him chase my shadow. The company was a mess beneath the glitter. Nepotism, poor cash flow, terrible PR structure, no crisis plan. I documented everything, presented it calmly, and made myself indispensable. Nathan began showing up to meetings early just to sit beside me. He started trying to engage me in small talk, as if we hadn't shared a decade together, as if he hadn't torn out my soul in front of a church full of witnesses. I let him. Every smile I gave him was calculated. Every brush of my fingers against his was a performance. Every compliment I offered about his vision was laced with venom he never tasted. Men like Nathan never saw the blade until it was buried in their chest. It didn't take long for him to crack. 2 weeks into the contract, he waited until the end of a late meeting to corner me by the elevator. "Eva," he said, voice low. Or should I say... I turned to him slowly. "Say what?" His eyes searched mine. "Is it really you?" I let a beat pass. "It's whoever you need me to be, Nathan." His breath caught. He looked older, more tired. The spark he used to have, the one that made girls fall over themselves to be noticed, was dim. He wasn't unattractive, but he wasn't untouchable anymore either. "I've thought about you every day," he said. "What I did, what happened. I was a coward." "Yes," I agreed. "You were." He flinched, but I didn't soften. "I made a mistake," he said. "A huge one. Jenna and I... Don't." I held up a hand. "Don't insult us both by pretending that was anything but pathetic." He swallowed hard. "Can we talk? Really talk?" I stepped into the elevator, turned back as the doors began to close. "You already said enough 5 years ago." But Nathan wasn't the only one I came back for. Jenna was harder to find. She had changed her last name, probably to distance herself from the scandal that followed my wedding day exposé. I found her eventually, working at a boutique bridal store. The irony was almost poetic. I booked a dress fitting under a fake name, walked in wearing sunglasses and a tight smile. The moment she saw me, her face drained of all color. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice shaking. I removed my sunglasses and smiled. "Don't you recognize me, Jenna? You were supposed to be my maid of honor." She froze. "You ruined me," she whispered. I tilted my head. "No, sweetie. You ruined yourself." I just told the truth. Tears welled in her eyes. "I lost everything. And I built everything," I said softly. "Funny how that works, isn't it? I was in love with him. And he was in love with the version of himself that looked good beside me. We were all deluded. She looked like she wanted to collapse. I didn't give her the satisfaction." "You taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, Jenna," I said, stepping closer. "Never trust anyone who hides their ambition behind a smile. You wanted my life? Now I'm here to make sure you never forget whose name was meant to be on it." She opened her mouth, but I was already walking away. I didn't need revenge through blood or scandal. I was the revenge. Now I had one last stop. The investor's presentation. I stood at the head of the table, confident and poised. Nathan sat across from me, hands clasped, trying to read me like a puzzle he threw away years ago. The investors loved my plan. They clapped. They praised my efficiency. One of them even asked if I would consider staying on long term. I smiled. Unfortunately, no. This was always meant to be a short-term project. Nathan stood abruptly after they left. "You're leaving?" "I came to finish what I started." "And what was that?" I turned to him, eyes sharp. "To remind you what happens when you underestimate the quiet ones." He looked like he wanted to say something more, but I didn't give him the chance. I picked up my bag, walked past him, and left the building with my head held high. 5 years ago, I walked away from a wedding. Today, I walked away from the ashes of the people who thought I'd never rise. And as I stepped out into the sunlight, the city buzzing around me, I felt it in my bones. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. 3 days after I walked away from the Goldwick boardroom, I received an invitation. Hand-delivered. No return address. Just my name, written in elegant calligraphy. "You are cordially invited to the engagement party of Jenna Blake and Ethan Price." Ethan Price. Nathan's cousin. He used to be quiet, kind, a little awkward, but always watching from the corner of the room. I remembered how he looked at me once, the night before my wedding, when he caught me crying in the hallway after a fight with Nathan. He never said a word, just handed me a tissue and disappeared. Now he was engaged to Jenna? This reeked of something else. I should have ignored it, tossed the card and moved on, but something in my gut told me this was no coincidence. And I'd learned to trust that feeling. The venue was a rooftop garden lit by chandeliers and champagne. Everyone wore white, of course, that desperate attempt at purity that high society clings to when it's rotting from the inside. I walked in wearing blood red. The room fell silent. People whispered. Faces turned. I spotted Nathan first, standing near the bar, gripping a drink like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw something I didn't expect. Regret. Real, raw regret. Good. Then Jenna entered, her hand clinging to Ethan's arm like a lifeline. She froze the moment she saw me. Her smile twitched, her fingers tensed. But Ethan looked at me like he had been waiting years. "Ava," he said, stepping forward, brushing a kiss across my cheek like we were old friends. "Ethan," I replied smoothly. "Congratulations," he smiled. "Thank you. I'm glad you came." Jenna's eyes darted between us like a bomb had just started ticking. I looked her over, her forced elegance, the overly done smile, the eyes full of insecurity. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I said sweetly. An hour into the party, Ethan found me alone by the terrace railing. "I know who you are," he said. I sipped my champagne without looking at him. Most people do. I mean, really. That made me turn. I was there, remember? He said. The church, the fallout, the silence after you left. You didn't reach out. I didn't know how, he said honestly. But I never forgot. There was a pause. Then he said something that froze me. I asked Jenna to marry me because I wanted to see you again. I turned slowly. What? He looked out at the city. Nathan ruined something extraordinary. Jenna helped him do it, and neither of them paid the price. You think marrying her is revenge? I think people like her destroy lives without consequences. I wanted her to taste fear, the kind that keeps you up at night. I wanted her to see what it feels like to be replaced. By me? He looked at me then, and there was something wild in his eyes, calculated, cold. You were never a ghost to me, Ava. You were the reckoning. I stepped back. You're using her. She used you first. There it was, the perfect reflection of what power does to people. Even the quiet ones eventually crave control. I shook my head. Then you're no better than they were. I don't want to be, he said. I want to win. He looked at me like we were allies, but I wasn't here to play someone else's game. I was here to finish mine. I left the party before midnight. No drama, no scenes, just whispers in my wake and Jenna crying quietly behind a bathroom door. Nathan followed me to the elevator. Eva, I didn't stop. Please. The doors opened. I stepped in. He slid in beside me. I never stopped loving you, he said softly. I laughed. You never loved me, Nathan. You loved how I made you look. You loved the idea of me. I was scared, he said. Back then, I didn't know how to be good enough for you. So you settled for someone beneath you? That was easier? I made a mistake. No, I said, staring straight ahead. You made a choice. The elevator door opened. I stepped out. He didn't follow. That night, I stood by the window of my apartment, watching the city move beneath me. I thought of everything I had done. How I had come back, not for closure, but for power. How I had weaponized my pain into precision. How I had looked each of them in the eye and made them feel exactly what I felt 5 years ago. But what now? What do you do when vengeance is complete? You rebuild. But this time, you build for you. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Ethan. Jenna left. Wedding's off. I guess she figured out what I was doing. But thanks for showing up. You gave her the final push. Drink sometime? I stared at the message, smiled, deleted it. I had already played that game. Now I was ready for something real. And if that never came, I was finally enough for myself. I packed a small bag, left my apartment keys on the counter, and booked a one-way ticket to Florence. Not to disappear, but to live. Because the best revenge isn't a breakdown. It's a life so full, so beautiful, so free, that the people who broke you can never reach it. But 2 years later, the sun was setting over Florence, casting gold over the Arno River. I sat at an outdoor cafe, a worn leather notebook open in front of me, a glass of Chianti in my hand. Tourists passed by in waves, laughing, taking photos, living lives that had nothing to do with who I used to be. That was the gift of starting over in a place where no one knows your past. You get to decide which parts to carry forward. I had built something here. A new consultancy, a gallery partnership, a circle of friends who called me Vivian, not Eva. They didn't know about the girl in the white dress, or the church, or the rage I once carried like armor. They just knew the woman who walked into a room like she owned it, in heels, in red, unapologetically alive. A breeze stirred the napkin under my glass. My phone buzzed. It was an email, from a name I hadn't seen in a long time. Nathan Reed. Subject: if you ever want to talk. No body text, just that. I stared at it for a moment. Not with anger, not with nostalgia, just quiet, unshaken peace. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I hit reply and typed. You taught me something important, Nathan. Some people are lessons, some are anchors. You were both. But I'm finally swimming on my own. Take care of yourself. Then I hit send and immediately blocked the address. That was the final piece. Not a scream, not a slap, just release. As I closed my notebook, a man at the next table glanced over and smiled. Dark hair, sun-warmed skin, a kindness in his eyes that felt familiar. Is that Italian poetry, or are you just pretending to be mysterious? He asked. I laughed. Neither. Just writing the ending to a story that took too long to finish. He raised his glass. To endings, then? I met his gaze, lifted mine. No, I said softly, to beginnings. We clinked glasses as the sun dipped behind the horizon. And just like that, the girl in the red dress, the ghost of a bride who once burned with fury, finally disappeared. Not because she was lost, but because she no longer needed to haunt anyone. She had found peace, at last.